So recently I've been seeing a lot of therapists freaking out about caseloads dropping, people not showing up, late cancellations, and just this kind of sense of panic that their caseload and their practice is completely falling apart. And I see people trying to frantically make all sorts of adjustments. They're trying to update their Psychology Today. They're trying to figure out what's wrong with the Alma profile. They're trying to find out what directories work, what other marketing strategy they can try. And today, I really want to address this. I want to address the natural ebbs and flows of private practice. I want to address ways that we can reduce the ebbs and flows. I want to talk about why ebbs and flows happen. And I want to talk about how you can most effectively use these slower seasons that inevitably happen in your private practice. Now, this is not just a video about what to do when things slow down. I'm going to give you some practical tips to help your practice grow also. So we're going to run the whole gamut here in this video. I'm really looking forward to it. But before we jump into any of that, if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe down below. Hit the thumbs up button on this video. Only if you want to though, there is no pressure. So the very first thing we need to do is assess what's actually happening. Again, I see people frantically making adjustments, changing profile pictures, updating wording, all sorts of things, making these micro adjustments because they think that they're doing something wrong. However, we need to take a step back, and before we make any changes, we need to assess what's actually happening. Now, there's a couple ways we can make this assessment. One is we can look at the actual data from our own practice. So we can take a look at the referrals over the last year, breaking it down by month. And you can do this in a simple Excel sheet. Just list out the months and the number of referrals that you're getting. It can be really, really basic. And if you're keeping track of it, then you might already have this data. If you're not keeping track of it, you might want to start doing that. And if you haven't been keeping track and you want to do that now, take a quick survey of the actual data. You can go through your emails or wherever you get your referrals and then just go back through the last year, the last couple months, and start filling out the Excel sheet. And once we start collecting that data, we can then begin to see if there's trends or there's patterns. Sometimes, and this happens to me, I freak out that referrals are not actually coming in and things are kind of declining, when in reality, when I look at the month as a whole, things actually are totally fine. The problem is I just look at 1 week's performance and I extrapolate that to be, the last 10 months, but really it's only been 1 or 2 slow weeks. And another way we need to make some assessments is by surveying the broader private practice landscape. So in this example where people are talking about things slowing down in the summertime, you're gonna see a ton of therapists across different states and across different specialties talking about the same thing. And when you look at that, you can be pretty sure that it's not just you and your practice that's the problem. Maybe there's a bigger pattern at play. And you can see here that if we're making micro adjustments to our headshots, to our wording on the profile, when really it's a bigger pattern that's across the board, we're gonna run into some problems. One, we're gonna be wasting time making all these adjustments when really that's not the root cause of the problem. I mean, what if it is just a pattern of the weather is getting nicer and so people aren't coming to therapy as often? We do see that happening, right? And you'll notice other patterns as well. So that's 2 ways we can begin to assess. I would start there. Collecting your own data, seeing what the actual numbers look like over the last couple of months, the last year, and then 2, taking a broader survey and seeing what other therapists are saying to see if it's a pattern that's much larger than just your own practice. All right, so then let's talk about what to do once we've made the assessment. And the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna play out 2 hypothetical scenarios. And this is like the 2 ways it could possibly go. Let's imagine we make the assessment and we realize it doesn't actually have anything to do with me specifically, but this is a seasonal issue. So let's imagine that the scenario here is that when the weather gets warmer and it gets nicer out, the no-show rates begin to increase and the referrals tend to decline. Then in this case, what would we do? Well, let's start with what we wouldn't do. We don't wanna be frantically changing the wording. We don't wanna be frantically making micro adjustments. We actually want to take this time to work on bigger projects that are going to have a long-term benefit. So a lot of us in private practice are strapped for time, right? We are seeing clients, we're running our own business, we're doing taxes. There's a lot we're doing. Yet there's a lot of bigger ticket items that we could work on if we had more time. And so when we have this downtime, we want to be really strategic with how we use it. Let me share an example from my own practice. So last year during the summer slowdown, what I decided to do was to really get serious about advertising in terms of Google ads, blogging, learning about SEO, engaging with a marketing company that could help me out. I knew this would take a lot of time. I did not have much time to actually engage in this during the season fun when I was seeing a lot of clients and running the group practice. But during the slowdown, I had some extra time. And so I really engaged in this project. I was able to learn a lot. I was able to really get this advertisement out. I learned a lot about SEO. I blogged. And in the long run, all of that paid off to make my practice that much stronger. So instead of making micro adjustments during that season and freaking out, I knew that this was just part of this season. And so I had prepared to work on a bigger project that I had the time for. And so if you're thinking, I don't have any projects to work on, I'm not really sure what you're even talking about, here are a couple of ideas of big projects that you can begin working on that I think would really benefit your practice in the long run. And number one would be to implement one new large marketing strategy. So maybe this is what I talked about. It's Google Ads. Maybe it's SEO that you're learning about. Maybe it's blogging. Maybe it's networking. But pick one strategy that will help you market your practice, or one marketing strategy that is larger in scale and that takes time. This is a great time to do that. Number two, side hustles, right? People are always talking about side hustles, whether it be starting Etsy stores, doing YouTube channels, doing social media, doing evaluations, whatever it might be. Now is a great time to begin learning about side hustles, what side hustles interest you, and how to get a side hustle started. In fact, if you want to learn more about side hustles and actually how to get started with some of them, I made a video all about that. I'll leave a link down below in the description. Number three is social media. I hear a lot of people talking about wanting to start YouTube channels. They want to start Instagram. They want to start TikTok, whatever it might be. They want to start making content. That takes a lot of time, a lot of prep, a lot of practice. And so when you have a slower season in your practice, it'd be a great time to start getting your feet wet, making some content, trying it out, seeing how you like it. That would be another thing you can begin working on that I think would be really helpful in the long run. Number four would be to start tackling large admin tasks in your practice. So I sometimes like to take these slower seasons and work on big workflow changes for my practice. So maybe it's digitizing my intake packet. Maybe it's working on how my packet gets sent to clients and making electronic signatures easier. Maybe it's how I interact with my team, my therapist. How do we talk about supervision and how do we communicate amongst ourselves effectively? So what are some workflow issues you've been running into that you just haven't had time to address? Is it emails? Is it communication? Is it the process of getting a client from the initial phone call into your practice? Think about whatever it is that's been a pain point for you. Now's a great time to begin working on it. Number five, choose one new skill that you could learn that would help you in the long run. So for example, maybe you want to learn how to do some of your own billing. Maybe you want to learn about Google Ads. Maybe you want to learn about how to blog. This kind of ties into the other ones I just talked about, but picking one new skill that you could teach yourself, spend some time practicing, that would help you over the long run. I would highly recommend learning a bit about billing. I feel like this is a really, really useful skill. Steep learning curve, takes a while, but the slow season is a great time to practice that. And in fact, if you do want to start that, I made another video all about billing. I'll leave a link down below in the description for that as well. And then my final suggestion would be firming up your niche. So you hear people talking about niche and specialties. Take this season to either continue to grow in that niche, to learn more about that specialty, to really firm it up. Or if you don't have one yet, maybe you begin exploring. You try different trainings. You get your feet wet in different areas of practice and specialty. Really figuring out your niche and going down that path is a great thing to do. And I think the slower season is a good time to start doing that. So let's imagine we've crunched the numbers for our practice and we realize it's not just a seasonal issue, but we realize that our referrals are actually declining and they've been declining for a while and we need to figure out how to make our practice grow again. And if that's the case, then what we want to do is focus on marketing and growing our practice. And here are a couple suggestions for you that I think could really go a long way. So one of the primary methods of obtaining referrals is through directories, right? So PsychologyToday, ZocDoc, Alma, Headway, these kinds of directories, right? And a directory is simply a place where a therapy seeker goes to find a therapist. And so number one is you want to be listed on a good number of directories that are popular with therapy seekers, right? So you want to be on the big ones, PsychologyToday, ZocDoc, Alma. There's a lot of therapy seekers going to these platforms and you just want your practice to be there so that the chances of being found are much higher. And so if you're already on these profiles and you're realizing that they're not really working for you, you're not getting many referrals, it's been a couple months and nothing is coming through, you might want to take a look at the wording that's actually on the profiles, right? And now this is sometimes referred to as copy. Now there's going to be tons of strategies out there. People are going to tell you to write to the client so that when they read it, it sounds like you're writing to them and their issues. Now, a lot of therapists, myself included, I was not trained in writing. I'm not the best writer. I don't know how to write in all sorts of different styles. I mean, if someone told me to write to my potential client, I wouldn't be able to do it that well. I'm just not a great writer. So you might want to consider hiring a copywriter to write out your profiles. Now, there's a lot of different companies out there that will do this for you. I will leave a link down below to a couple that I know about. You can check out Fiverr even. This is a website where you can hire freelancers. You can usually find some pretty highly reviewed copywriters on there for a good price, and you're able to go back and forth with them a little bit. But the point is to think about maybe having someone write the copy on your profiles for you. Because think about it, when a client sees your profile, what they read is how they determine whether or not they're going to book with you. So thinking about that is going to go a long way. Number two, and it's related to our profiles, is our headshot. So do we have a blurry and fuzzy photo? Is the photo not quality and it's cut from another photo? You do want to have a professional looking headshot. I do find this to be helpful. Now, I don't mean that you need to go out and have a photographer take the picture for you, although if you have access to that, it's a great thing. But I actually did make a video about how to make a professional headshot with just your iPhone all by yourself. I will leave a link to that down below in the description as well. But I do think having a nice crisp headshot can also go a long way. And continuing the discussion about directories, you might want to think about joining other directories that are popular that you're not quite signed up for. One of the major ones that people hesitate with is ZocDoc. This is a really popular directory, especially in a place like New York, but people don't sign up for it because they feel like it costs too much money. And it is true that ZocDoc is more costly than most other platforms. It might be the most costly directory out there, but it is popular. And if you need to enroll on ZocDoc just to get the ball rolling, there's nothing wrong with that. And at the end of the day, if you're able to build a small caseload with ZocDoc, it will eventually pay off. So it might be a worthwhile investment to think about those directories. And again, it doesn't have to be permanent, but maybe it's just an interim until you grow. Another thing that people often overlook is a Google My Business profile. This is a totally free profile that you can fill out on Google that allows you to show up in search results in your local area. So for example, I'm in New York City in a particular neighborhood. If someone in the neighborhood where I work Googles DBT therapy near me, because I have a Google My Business profile listing, I will show up in the maps, which often shows up at the very top of the page. And usually the way to get to the top of a page is through SEO, blogging, extreme marketing strategies, or it's through paid advertising. But if you have a Google My Business profile, which is free, this is a way that you can get to the top much more easily. Now, you don't want to just go ahead and fill that out haphazardly. You want to fill out that profile correctly. I actually have a lengthy tutorial on how to fill out Google My Business as a therapist. I will leave a link to that video down below in the description as well. Another thing that you can begin to do to build a caseload is by networking. Now, I'm not talking about handing out business cards and flyers the old school way. What I'm talking about is going into the Facebook communities, going into the Alma section that says ISO in search of, and starting to respond to all the inquiries that you feel like you're qualified to respond to, right? So when I was first starting my practice, I would often go to Facebook groups, and there's tons of therapist groups where people are searching for providers, right? And I would just start listing my name under all the requests that I was qualified to help. And I didn't get all of them, but every so often I would get a new lead, or it'd be a couple months from now when people say, I heard about your practice, someone told me about you. It always paid off in the long run. Even if you spend 10, 15 minutes a day going through some of the ISO requests, whether it be on Facebook or Alma. And oh yes, ISO means in search of. If you go through those and you respond, it might not pay off in the immediate, although it could, and sometimes it does. It will definitely pay off in the long run. So I would encourage you to spend some time each day going through those different requests and responding. And another thing that you can also do, which actually ties into the first thing we talked about in terms of copy and what's written on your profiles, is think about how you can establish a specialty or a niche, and think about how you can incorporate that specialty and niche into your different profiles. So how do you make it clear that you do whatever it is you do, right? So I do DBT, I work with folks with ADHD. If you go to my website, it's very clear that that's what we do. It's not ambiguous. You don't see us advertising that we do everything under the sun, but you're gonna see primarily that we do DBT and we work with ADHD. Now you'll see some other things as well, but those two stand out as the most prominent. What is your niche? What is your specialty? And is it incorporated clearly into your website, into your profiles, into the copy that you have? And this is what people are reading before they click schedule a consultation. So you really wanna make sure that that is clear. And these are just a couple of strategies that you can begin working on. If you wanna know more, I made another at-length video all about different marketing strategies that you can try as a therapist in private practice. I'll leave a link to that video down below in the description as well. All right, and so those are the two main scenarios that you'll probably find yourself in. And so one thing to remember is that there will always be ebbs and flows in private practice. It can actually feel like an emotional roller coaster, and this is part of running a private practice. I've been doing it now for a little while. I have some pretty strong strategies in place, and I still go through natural ebbs and flows. I feel like I'm on an emotional roller coaster sometimes. This is the name of the game. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have a more consistent, thriving private practice. Over time, you'll notice that the actual ebbs and flows that feel like this in the beginning start to get smaller. You start to get used to them, and you can get to a place where you have strategies in place and skills in place and enough knowledge in place where you're not as thrown off by the ebbs and flows. It will take time. It will take practice. I hope today's video helped you. I hope you learned something. And at the very end of the day, I hope you are more motivated now to thrive in private practice than you were when you first clicked the video. I'll see you in the next one.